Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is a special holiday edition of Levin TV. And left-wing media mayhem. Joy Reid. Reid ignores Ketanji Jackson's record of bias and goes after white Christian conservatives instead. Well, what else would she do? Rachel Madcow, Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes, upset about Elon Musk buying Twitter and how gleeful conservatives are. I must confess, I'm gleeful. Fake Tapper, the media's liberal hand-wringing in the wake of the physical attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, despite crime rates being up everywhere, through the roof. Kamala Harris, the media backs her when she says the border's secure, even when immigrants show up on her doorstep. Let's check it out. Go.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
Now, Joy Reid is on MSNBC. It's late into March. I had read somewhere some weeks ago in a news publication that she was on the way out because of her overt, hateful racism and bigotry and her earlier homophobic tweets and so forth, which of course she blamed on a hacker. Nobody could find this hacker because she's a liar. And yet there she is, 7 p.m. Eastern time, every weeknight on MSNBC. And she's there to promote her hate and her vile bigotry. And she does it again today. It's called the Reid Out, because her name is Joy Reid. Let's take a look. MSNBC. Go.
Joining me now to talk about this second day of confirmation hearings for the very good, very gracious, very poised Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson and the very good man, Senator Cory Booker, just wrapping it up, thank God, on an up note. Joining me now, former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. And former...
First of all, Cory Booker is a head case. Remember the Kavanaugh hearings? Remember how he kind of lost it? Cory Booker was grown up with a gold spoon in his mouth. He went to some of the best schools. He went to Harvard. He became mayor of Newark. He became a U.S. senator. He's had a very good life in America, but you wouldn't know it listening to him. Go ahead.
Harry Littman. Harry, I've been looking at your tweets. I've been sitting here watching what you've been tweeting. I want to let you give us what you thought of today.
Today was solid for her, but this last hour, I think was I'm a little reeling from, sort of an emotional reaction, but I think it's the best hour I've ever seen in a confirmation hearing.
Well, then he hasn't watched many confirmation hearings. She can't talk about what a woman is and this, that, and the other. I've seen great confirmation hearings. Justice Scalia, fantastic, absolute genius, brilliant, and we can go on. But this was the best hour in a confirmation hearing? Go ahead.
Look, Cotton's totally nasty and foolish, really, line of questioning. And
no, very nasty and foolish. So they take the words that she spoke and ask her to explain them, to expose her support for critical race theory, to expose her support for the transgender movement and the destruction of women's sports, to expose her radicalism because she's been trying to hide it. And that's very, very nasty. The idea that this hearing is nasty is absurd. It doesn't come close to what the Democrats do to nominees. Go ahead.
Clobbered him with perfect temperament. And then this back and forth with Booker, I found it completely genuine, moving, dignified, emotional.
By the way, this is a Democrat hack. I believe he worked under Obama. Oh, it's just so... We've never seen anything so fantastic. It's just unbelievable. This guy's former deputy attorney general. Oh, my goodness. The back and forth with Booker, it was so genuine, and the Republicans were so nasty, questioning her about her record, what she wrote, what she said, questioning her about her concepts and her policies and her beliefs and how she would adjudicate in this lifetime appointment. So nasty, with all the dog whistles and everything else. But Booker, when Booker asked her question, Booker didn't ask her anything serious. Booker said, you know, when I was a young man, I attended a small black church, and to watch you today as the nominee, I tell you, and he goes on. He would never say that to Clarence Thomas. So this is all BS. Go ahead.
Really think it's the best hour I've ever seen on both sides of the aisle any nominee have, and I've been watching these a while.
I have to agree with you.
Why? Doesn't say why. It just is. I've been watching them a while. They're great. And there's Joy Reid, who chooses her guests. I happen to agree with you. By the way, I've invited Joy Reid on my radio show several times. We get no response. None. Zero. Go ahead.
I agree. And I'm not an expert like you are, Harry, but I agree.
Harry's not an expert either. He's just a lapdog. Go ahead.
The word I would use for Tom Cotton was thuggish. I thought he was...
Oh, so Tom Cotton was thuggish when he read about this drug kingpin. Tom Cotton was thuggish. Look, Tom Cotton should be throwing confetti and thanking the good Lord for the presidency of Joe Biden and his insights in choosing Brown Jackson. We should be very, very thankful for this moment in American history. Go ahead.
I thought he was thuggish. That's what I'm going to go with.
Cretin.
Cretin. He was a cretin. Now, here we have a man who actually served his country in Iraq, in combat. Look at the clown on the right. Oh, yes, he was thuggish and a cretin for reading back to her the things that she had done in the case of a drug kingpin. He wasn't rude. He didn't attack her personally. They didn't go into her yearbook in high school or junior high or any of that stuff. Go ahead.
Thuggish. I mean, I want to go to you, Paul. These men thought of themselves as prosecutors today, but Tom Cotton didn't understand that there's not a named victim in a crime.
You know, these people are obnoxious and stupid, which is why they have no ratings. But ask yourself this. Many of you have cable TV, you have Comcast. This broadcast is brought to you by Comcast. Comcast owns MSNBC, they own NBC. Why do they continue to promote Joy Reid, given her background, given her hate, given her daily bigotry, and the clownish buffoons that she brings on her program? It's one thing to be a liberal, so-called. It's one thing to be left of center. It's one thing to bring on these liberal professors to tell us how great this nominee and so forth is. You've listened to about 5 minutes of this, and you've learned nothing except the clown on the right used to work for the Democrats. He thought this was fantastic. You have no idea why. You have Joy Reid in the middle, who predictably is obtuse and bizarre, just going on about the nominee, because the nominee is the same sex, race, and ideology as Joy Reid, so therefore she's qualified. And then we bring this guy on the left. I don't even want to hear from him. He's just about to jump in. But Tom Cotton, a man who served with honor in Iraq, in a combat, he's a cretin and he's a thug. He didn't do anything that was thuggish. He didn't do anything that suggested he's a cretin. But he did read the case and the facts that involved a case in which Brown Jackson ruled and let a drug kingpin go. Or in the case of Hawley, he's been dogged about exposing her weakness in sentencing child pornographic predators. Seems to me this stuff's relevant. Or in the case of Blackburn, who was superb in drilling down on the issue of women and what is a woman, and is there a difference between a woman and a man, and reading from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it was all done in a very, very professional manner and a respectful manner. But you're not allowed to raise issues. The Democrats are totalitarians. They're used to uniformity and conformity. They're used to crushing their opponents. They're used to censorship, like with big tech and so forth, and this is what they demand. Here's Joy Reid, and she's back with her racist antics. Every night she's there with her racist antics, claiming white Christians threaten American democracy. Go.
And then there is this other version of citizenship, which essentially says that the purpose of a society is not to advance the lot of us, but really to advance me and people like me. And I have no obligation to the greater society because anyone other than me should not be my problem. It's a really extreme form of great man libertarianism. It's Ayn Randism mixed with fascism plus a Brazil and Moscow chaser. So if people are poor or hungry, that's on them.
Ayn Rand, a libertarian, Hayek, Mises, Friedman, Adam Smith, so many, David Hume, so many great minds, and she just dumps on them. The country that feeds the most people is the United States. The country, even our poor people are better fed than poor people on any other continent on the world. We ship food overseas to the third world to help feed them. This is the place that produces food, excess food. We've never seen anything like this in the history of humanity. Never. And she trashes it. I don't know how you look around, you wake up in this country and hate it so thoroughly and ignore all the facts. Me Tooism she talks about, really? Well, look at these Marxist societies and the people who run them. It's all about Me Tooism and power and shuffling for power and who's going to be on the Politburo and who's going to be doing this, that, and the other thing. Well, the rest of society is left out. Tell me what Communist China is doing to Hong Kong, even today. Is that for the greater good? Tell me when China rounds up 2 million Uyghurs and sends them to concentration camps and does unspeakable things to them, is that for the greater good? Look at Venezuela, where people are starving to death and they send out militia and regular army to beat them and kill them if they dare to speak out, where people are trying to get out of that country by the millions. Is that for the greater good? Can you show me one place that focuses on the greater good in that way, that has a greater good? No, this is very complicated for some people to understand, but when you respect the individual, when you respect individual humanity, when you allow people to pursue their interests, what motivates them and so forth, they contribute to society, they contribute wealth to society, they volunteer to society, they create families, they contribute to the civil society. When you have one, two, or a relative handful of people trying to engineer society and re-engineer human nature, you have death and poverty. That's what you have. But for the most part, she just spewed out what Marxism stands for in a very sort of basic way. Go ahead.
Now, if I choose, I'll give to charity because that will make me feel good and me look good. But you can't make me help other people. It's a version of citizenship that depends not just on toddler-level selfishness, but on the existence of a group of special citizens who must always win and be appeased in order for things to be, quote, fair. And secondary citizens and non-citizens whose feelings just do not count. It's a society designed to make me, the member of the special citizen group, and people like me, feel good all the time. And who are these special citizens? Why, they're white so-called Christian conservatives who feel like this country was built by them for them. And so everyone but them needs to suck it up and let them have their way.
White Christian conservatives. White Christian conservatives. These are the people who think they're special and better than anybody else. These are the people who are selfish and only represent themselves. White Christian conservatives. She really means European Protestants. You ever been to Arlington Cemetery? Many of you have. Some of you have family buried there. I don't think Joy Reid has. Acre after acre, row after row of those brave men, those heroes who served this country. The overwhelming majority of whom are white male Christians. Not all, but the overwhelming majority. You see the headstones? You see the crosses? Oh, they're Stars of David too, don't get me wrong. Overwhelmingly white male Christians. Were they privileged? Did they contribute to society? Were they only about themselves? Or did they give the ultimate to protect this country so Joy Reid could go on there, become a millionaire, and rail against them and their faith? and their skin color. White male Christians. You ever been to a Civil War battlefield? I'm awestruck when I go to these battlefields and I realize, and you think about and you read about what took place in a relatively small area. The horrific battles that took place. There were approximately 50,000 casualties at Gettysburg. Mostly white men fighting white men. And most of the white men were with the Union. And they fought. They killed other men as they were killed. To do what? To do two things. To keep the Union together and to end slavery. Those men that died, those men that screamed bloody murder, who were wounded on the battlefield, but nothing could be done for them. Was that white privilege too? I'm just curious. Was that white privilege? No, I don't think so. And it's unfortunate we have to talk this way, and we have to remind ourselves of our own history when we're dealing with people like this, in critical race theory, and the white dominant culture, and on and on and on. When we send our troops to one place or another, sometimes they're involved in defending people who aren't white. In fact, often they're involved in defending people who aren't white from this white dominant society. You see, America, we're all red-blooded. We're a very diverse society, all colors, all backgrounds, all faiths. But we're Americans. We're supposed to be Americans. People like this don't believe that, but we're Americans. We are a wonderful people. We are an imperfect country, but more perfect than any other, and a great country, and a big country with a lot of people. We have laws, imperfectly applied, but intended to be just. We have a Bill of Rights, imperfectly applied, but intended to protect the individual, no matter whom that individual is. It doesn't talk about race in the Bill of Rights. We have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments adopted after the Civil War to stamp out slavery, to enshrine equality, due process for everybody. Those amendments became part of the Constitution as a result of 3/4 of the state legislatures adopting them. You can't have an amendment without the legislature approving them in either way, Article 5 or the typical amendment process. That's just the way it is. We're a fantastic people. And to have Comcast give a platform to somebody like this, and she's not alone, and CNN, owned by AT&T, to give a platform of like people, to hear the Democrat Party, which has done more to try and destroy the American dream for millions of people, from slavery and segregation and Jim Crow, to poll taxes, to its embrace now of what they call democratic socialism, but what is really American Marxism. The Democrat Party has been a very, very evil force in this country, with some exceptions, but not enough. And it remains a grave threat today, the greatest threat we face. If we are weak within, we cannot defend ourselves against China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and the rest of our enemies that are salivating under this administration to figure out ways to gain the upper hand. The Democrat Party and the media, there's no difference between them. They say exactly the same thing. They support exactly the same thing. And so the First Amendment is teetering. It's teetering. This is why they want to crush dissent, crush the competition of ideas in every corner of this society, not just in the media, but in schools, in public, and on social media, because they have embraced this notion of American Marxism, that America's bad, they have all the best ideas, and they use liberty to destroy liberty, and they use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution. Rachel Maddow's at MSNBC once a week. To me, that's once a week too often. And she says pretty much that Elon Musk is going to regret the purchase of Twitter. Now, she would know, being an entrepreneur and being a successful businesswoman, she's none of those things. She's an idiot. She's a big mouth. It's very, very hard, you see, to get wealthy and get a position on liberal platforms if you're a liberal. I say that tongue-in-cheek. Let's take a listen. Go.
And one of the things that we've seen when other people have not taken over big media companies, but started their own niche media companies on this issue of free speech and not doing content moderation and it being a wide open Wild West, and that's the point of it, is that pretty quickly.
He didn't say it's going to be a wide open Wild West. There may be some restrictions. I mean, if somebody gets on there and commits acts of libel and so forth, I suspect they're going to want to take a look at that because they don't want to be exposed. If somebody's on there saying, I'm going to kill my wife in 3 minutes, I don't think that's going to be allowed. And certain other things, if somebody's just a racist or an anti-Semite or a bigot or whatever. So, but this wide open Wild West, putting all that aside, there's a big box, a huge box. So if people want to debate masks, they want to debate vaccines, people want to debate politics, they want to debate climate change. What's happening with the big oligarchs is climate change, no. You either believe it or you're out, or we give you the scarlet letter. You don't agree with the mask? Disinformation, misinformation. As Obama says, you're going to get people killed. He would know. But anyway, so you're off. And these are scientists and medical doctors and other people who want to have that discussion. That shouldn't be banned or censored or anything of the kind. If somebody is a kook, it'll be figured out. It'll be known. The problem we've had with big tech and these oligarchs is propaganda that goes in one direction. That's the problem. And the idea that you would ban a former president from Twitter, Donald Trump, who says he's not going back, he's got his own that he's created, and yet the Ayatollah Khamenei, or one of those thugs, genocidal maniacs, is still able to communicate on a Twitter is absurd. And when you consider all the business these big oligarchs do in communist China, it's amazing. I noticed that Bezos attacked Musk for doing business in China. I said, wait a minute. Does Amazon do business in China? Of course they do. Doesn't Amazon buy stuff? Isn't it the go-between for China products? Of course it is. So he quickly pulled the tweet because he realized, oops, I made an ass out of myself, as he often does. Go.
We get lots of ISIS beheading videos and, child pornography and,
Oh, child pornography. Wait a minute. We just had a nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States who was just confirmed who went soft on punishment for child pornographers and those who watch it. I don't remember Rachel Maddow speaking out against her, do you? She went under the average sentence, way under the sentencing guidelines for these pervs. And everybody says, why? Oh, you must be a racist. Don't you understand? She's a historic figure. She's our first African-American birthing woman. Now, if you don't like it, there's something wrong with you. Don't be nasty. This is what they say. This is what they say. And by the way, the same people, again, a footnote, we have a gentleman by the name of Evans, Bishop Evans. He was with the Texas National Guard. He was not a border guard. He didn't sign up for that. But he goes into the Rio Grande, saves 2 people. Turns out they are drug smugglers, and he drowns and dies. And this man served 2 tours. I believe it was in Iraq. He's a hero. Nobody will attend his funeral from Washington. He was an African American. Nobody will talk about what a fantastic man he is. No, because he has the background of a great patriot, a great hero. They'll never mention him, and yet Biden's policies forced the National Guard in Texas to get on that border and this man to drown to death. I'm not trying to go off on tributaries here. This is important to me. But because he's not famous, or he doesn't have power, or he won't be on the court issuing left-wing, decisions rather than adjudicating honestly, they don't care. They won't even mention his name. Biden won't go down there. Harris won't go down there for any memorial, any actual funeral. No. Go ahead.
eating disorder dysmorphia photos and other things that in some cases are illegal, and in other cases make the use of the site impossible for normal humans with normal gag reflexes. Is that fair? And B, how does an
Kind of a stupid question is this. Freedom and free speech have what they have. We can't make a perfect situation. If we make a perfect situation, we have genocide. We have all-powerful government deciding what is and isn't perfect. Rachel Maddow must not be aware of her own network, where they have racists left and right, where they abound, where they say the most disgusting things. And I'm specifically talking about Joy Reid and Tiffany Cross, among others, some of the guests they bring on. The constant references when Trump was president to Hitler and Nazism and so forth. I guess she doesn't understand that. But nonetheless, there will be some restrictions. But what I'm talking about is areas where there never should be restrictions. So that's why Rachel Maddow doesn't say things like, there should be no debate on vaccines, because she'd look like a fool. There should be no debate on masks, because she'd look like a fool. There should be no debate on climate change, because she'd look like a fool. In fact, there should be no debate on the radical left Marxist agenda, because she'd look like a fool. There should be no debate on transgenderism taught to our little babies and kids. Well, that's the issue. To be honest with me, are we going to be allowed to confront big government and the iron fist? Are we going to be allowed to confront the American Marxist movements that are in our campuses, colleges, and public schools, and in our culture being promoted by this government? The answer is, hopefully on Twitter now we can. That's what the reaction, it's not the reaction to somebody barfing on social media or something of that sort. It's perfectly legitimate debate being squashed by Silicon Valley oligarchs. It is a conservative perspective or philosophy being squashed. It is real scientists and mathematicians and medical doctors and others who are cut out from the debate, the competition of ideas. These are the same people who have tried to crush conservative talk radio. These are the same people who want to put Fox out of business by taking away their access to various cable platforms. That's who they are. They are fundamentally totalitarian in their thinking. Go ahead.
Mr. Musk contend with that? How would a Mr. Musk contend with that kind of previous experience and other people who've taken on the same task?
Yeah, look, that's incredibly fair from both sides of this, from both sides of this of the spectrum here, from the extremist forum side and from the civilian internet side. So on the civilian internet side, you have stuff like TikTok and Twitter and Facebook. And here's a content moderation challenge from TikTok from a few weeks ago.
Careful, I love it when employees of the same network interview each other. So this guy's an NBC so-called reporter. She's an MSNBC so-called host, and they're interviewing each other about a platform that they thought they intellectually and ideologically owned, Twitter. Now, what do you think about this? How can I do this? How about we have a debate on what Twitter had become, which is a propaganda operation for the left, for big government, and a thuggish operation for anybody who had a different thought. Go ahead.
Girl on TikTok was trying to make slime, the stuff that like 12-year-olds play with. She was trying to make slime and she made napalm by mistake. Now, is that free speech? Should you leave it up?
So does anyone have a problem with them cutting that out? I don't. Do you, Mr. Producer? She made napalm. Okay. First of all, it's hard to cut out after the fact, but once it's up there, you can remove it. Is anybody debating this? Making napalm by accident on the internet? No. Why don't they debate the issues that brought us to this point? Why don't you, pal? Go ahead.
TikTok took that down. They found it and they were like, this is very dangerous, really bad. Should take this down. We shouldn't be teaching kids how to make napalm.
Don't wear masks on a plane. That's very dangerous. That should be taken down, right? No, it's not dangerous and it shouldn't be taken down. I can give you a million things that aren't dangerous that shouldn't be taken down. Go ahead.
That's an issue. I would bet Elon Musk's Twitter is going to take that down. But I don't know. I'm not really sure here what falls into that.
So what if he does? What he said is, when in doubt, side with free speech. I would be very hesitant to ban somebody for life. Wow. So now, what do these people talk about? Throw up and napalm. Have throw up and napalm been an issue? Do we have conservatives and others, civil libertarians who used to be of the left as well? We have them saying, I insist that throw up and napalm be allowed on social media. No. This is an unserious discussion by two knuckleheads. Go ahead.
Into that space, especially now that he's taking the company private, oversight for this sort of thing will be very different. And I will say, by the way, Rachel, everybody has a line. 4chan, for example, everyone thinks that...
First of all, that wallpaper behind your head is really ugly. It's distracting, isn't it, Mr. Producer? I mean, with the flowers and the leaves and everything, just a thought. And it clashes with the picture as well as the lamp. Go ahead.
Is the worst site on the internet. And it was for a long time. But they had a line. They had a direct line. And that line to them was anime depictions of child pornography.
Thank you. No more. What did we learn from these two knuckleheads? Zippo, nada. When you look at Marx didn't want competing ideas. He didn't believe in free speech, and no Marxist regime does. No totalitarian regime does. We're the ones who fight for the Constitution. Go.
The most consistent tone of Trump-era conservatism is whining. Donald Trump is the biggest whiner, the biggest whiner I've ever encountered in life. It's what he does, all he does, moan, complain about his media coverage, rigged election.
Actually, you're the biggest whiner I've ever heard. What a goofball. In fact, your whole network is whining constantly. Elizabeth Warren never stops whining, and AOC never stops whining. But this isn't about whining, is it? No. This is about Twitter. And you've lost control over Twitter. Twitter's going to be, at least we understand it, an open format. And they hate it. They hate it. Go.
The entire right-wing universe around him has taken up the same tone. I mean, just constantly whining, whinging about all the affronts and the indignities that they, in some cases, some of literally the wealthiest, most powerful.
That sounds like Disney, doesn't it? Whining, complaining. I mean, it sounds like the left all the time. Whining, complaining, lying about racism and inequality, lying about the country, whining about this monument, whining about that word. Whining about bathrooms for guys and gals, can you imagine? Go ahead.
People in the world have endured. And that's the reason they're all extremely excited about the news, which I'm sure you've seen, that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has reached a deal to buy Twitter.
A good news show, don't get those too often. Elon Musk bought Twitter today.
Twitter. It's in Elon Musk's hands. Can you believe it?
Musk's purchase of Twitter is the single biggest political development since Donald Trump's election in 2016.
Count this one as a victory for free speech.
He's going to take it private, signaling a return, hopefully, to free speech principles.
And he may, in fact, save the town square.
Okay. Let's put aside the coded meaning of free speech. We can get to that later. But it's a little weird how psyched they all are. Like, calm down, guys. Like, it's cool. Like, a rich guy bought a social media platform.
No, it's not a rich guy bought a social media platform, you idiot. It's a guy with a principled position who is standing up against totalitarianism and tyranny, who's promoting speech. That's why people are excited and extremely hopeful. It's pushback against the attack on our culture. It's pushback against the attack on our founding principles. That's why it is exciting and hopeful. And we hope that this carries through. And it's a challenge to Facebook and all the rest of them. That's a good thing. Go ahead.
You can sense the palpable feeling of excitement in those moments of celebration. And it might seem weird, but to understand that joy about this individual billionaire buying a social media company.
Way, has anybody, the guy's been talking what now, Mr. Pitt, 3 minutes? Has he said anything? What has he said? Has he said anything? No. Go Go ahead.
You have to understand how this strange, very whiny worldview has come to dominate the right wing. In that world, people on the right are now classifying every institution in American life as either our team or their team, as if there's like a ledger, right? And the essence of modern MAGA-era conservatism is bemoaning the fact that, in their mind, every institution in American life has moved from our team to their team.
No. We need to send him a copy of the book American Marxism, don't you think? It's not our team versus their team. You jerks are destroying our country. You propagandists for the jerks who are destroying our country are destroying our country. From the classroom in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools to the classroom in colleges and universities, to the border, where now we know over 1 million illegal aliens in the first year of the Biden administration have come across the border, and that's not even counting the unaccounted for illegal aliens. Where you have destroyed our currency and created massive inflation, where you've destroyed us as energy independent, and now we have to rely on Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and our allies are being choked off by Russia. You jerks did that. Where you attack our constitutional system relentlessly, whether it's the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth, Fifth, Ninth, and most of them don't even know what I'm talking about. Where you promote somebody to the Supreme Court who is a radical leftist who has no intention of upholding the Constitution. How can you believe in critical race theory and that the Constitution was written by white supremacists? And you've attacked more than that. You're attacking the nuclear family and you claim it's civil rights. You've undermined the United States military with social engineering. You've destroyed police forces all over this country by backing the criminals, by beating our cops, by suing our cops, and now the murder rates are through the roof. We have never controlled these institutions the way you speak of, you big dummy. We're trying to push back so we can continue to live in a free country. I think this jerk either wrote for Mother Jones or The Nation before he got this job. In other words, he's way out there. He is a kook. They say it's about whining. No, it's about free speech. And as far as I'm concerned, it's about activism. And next time, I hope a billionaire steps forward and buys Comcast, which owns NBC and MSNBC, and among others, fires your big ass. The border is secure, says Kamala Harris. You have to be Helen Keller on that border to not know that it's wide open. Even the illegal immigrants coming across say it's wide open. Millions and millions of people are new into the United States, in your country, who wouldn't be here if the border was secure. And Venezuela is emptying its prisons. I read that the other day, sending prisoners in here. We have terrorists coming in here, MS-13 coming in here. Drug cartels are getting positioned within the United States, not just outside our borders. You have coyotes coming in, not the ow, but you know, the human coyotes coming in. You have rapes occurring. You have sexual slavery occurring. You have the molestation of children being separated from their families. But only Martha's Vineyard matters. You notice most of the rest of the media, other than Fox, they're not planning people down there day in and day out to watch this catastrophe. Go.
Congressman, that's just not true, right? I mean, you're on the front line. You've spent your whole life in Laredo. The border is not secure, is it?
The border is not secure, without due respect to the VP. Look, we get thousands of people along the border, from 6,000 to 8,000 people a day. So you're talking about almost 4+, maybe 4.4 million individuals in 2 years. If you call that secure, I don't know what secure it is.
That was Texas Congressman Henry Cuellar there, declaring that no, the border is not secure. Congressman Cuellar is a Democrat, and being in Laredo, Texas means that he is at the forefront of what is happening at the southern border. He joined CNN, where he said, with all due respect to Vice President Kamala Harris, what she said last week about the border being secure is just not right. Here's what the VP told NBC News last week.
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. but there are still a lot of problems that we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years.
The situation at the border is one of the biggest issues facing the United States.
First of all, they just lie. They just flat out lie. Border's not secure. Ask the people in Martha's Vineyard. Go ahead.
What it means for states that border Mexico, like Texas, California, New Mexico and Arizona, is that thousands of illegal immigrants manage to cross their lines every single day. Henry Cuellar says that they are seeing around 6,000 to 8,000 people a day at the border. It is a crisis. There's no other way to describe it. Last year, there was around 1.7 million encounters with illegal immigrants. So far, in the 2022 fiscal year, there has been around 2 million encounters. Congressman Cuellar pointed out that those statistics don't even include the getaways of those who've actually made it into the country. So you can't exactly say that 4 million encounters in 2 years is secure. Now, the situation has angered Republican governors greatly, who believe that Joe Biden's administration isn't doing enough. So much so that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sent 50 migrants by plane from Texas to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. That is a very upmarket, wealthy holiday spot and was considered a political move from DeSantis. Governors had previously warned that they were prepared to send illegal immigrants to heavily Democrat cities to send some sort of message. The 50 migrants that ended up at Martha's Vineyard, a spot that even Obama owns a home at, stayed for a few days in a local church before they were taken to Joint Base Cape Cod. The Florida governor copped backlash for his actions, with some even accusing him of human trafficking. However, he claims that the illegal immigrants went there voluntarily.
It's only when you have 50 illegal aliens end up in a very wealthy, rich sanctuary enclave that he decides to scramble on this. And so I think what we are doing I think what we're continuing to do is use every tool at our disposal to insulate the state of Florida from the negative ramifications of his reckless border policies. So instead of scrambling and worrying about a bunch of rich people and having 50, and oh, by the way, they already bust them out. They're gone. They said we want everyone, no one's illegal, and they're gone within 48 hours. And so why not actually look at what's going on? There were more Acela corporate journalists in Martha's Vineyard today than have ever gone down to the southern border to look what's going on. Why don't you go down there and look what some of those communities have to deal with every day?
Exactly right. 100% correct. We will see if this will end, and the only way it will end is if power is taken away from the radical Democrats that run this country and are running it into the ground. But you see the lying that Biden and Kamala Harris and the media do for them. They just keep lying to the American people. Why aren't they celebrating the open border? That's their policy. Why aren't they celebrating inflation? Why aren't they celebrating high gas prices? They've talked about it. Some of them even talked about it publicly. We're going to get prices high enough so you people just stop living the way you live. Now we have states banning gas-powered vehicles. And then they're going to ban vehicles altogether because the electricity is not going to cut it. And then they're going to ban the number of days you can drive, how many automobiles you can have, eventually ban automobiles. Federal government will license them to determine who gets what. You won't be able to get around, so you're going to have to live in more and more dense areas, in smaller apartments with public transportation. Starting to sound like the old Soviet Union, isn't it? Well, that's right. Fake Jake Tapper over there at the Constipated News Network, he's on 9 p.m. Eastern Time now up against Hannity, and he's getting slaughtered. And the reason is he's a fraud. He's a fake tapper. And so they take this instance with Nancy Pelosi's husband and they just exploit it. They haven't spent time on the number of people who've been murdered every single day in this country, especially on the weekends in Democrat metropolitan areas, as a result of Democrat policies undermining the police, as a result of Democrat bail policies where recidivists, they come in the front door, they're out the back door. You've seen it. They don't condemn Soros prosecutors. They don't do long stories on those people who refuse to put these thugs in prison. And we could go on and on and on, couldn't we? But Nancy Pelosi is their darling. And nobody that I'm aware of likes what happened to her husband. As a matter of fact, it is frightening. And it's frightening what happened to Scalise. It's all frightening. But the average American in this country is facing this kind of crap every single day. And it doesn't have to be that way. When you create a lawless environment, the law of the jungle, which means no law, yes, even prominent people are going to be attacked. But that appears to be when it draws the attention of the media, not otherwise. Go.
The notion that violent crime is on the rise has left millions of Americans scared, and the GOP has tried to harness the power of that fear.
There you go. It's the Republicans' fault that people are afraid. Not the Democrat policies. It's the Republicans' fault because they're harnessing this fear. No, they're running on this. So you have a choice between people who are pro-criminal and people who are pro-law enforcement. It's called an election. At least we have a party in this country that knows the difference between law and order and soft on crime. Now, I want to remind you that Jake Tapper used to be the mouthpiece for Handgun Control Inc. years ago. Go ahead.
Republicans condemned the Pelosi attack. They disputed that rhetoric played any role and instead pointed the finger entirely at the issue.
Well, you have no evidence whatsoever. None. About rhetoric of any kind, let alone from Republicans. There's none to this day. Right now. You would think if they had it, we would hear about it. I mean, you have the Hunter Biden laptop, which they pretend doesn't exist. And then they concoct this idea that some Republican must have said. Maybe it was a talk show host that caused this mental guy, this unhinged guy, to attack Paul Pelosi. Do they listen to their own rhetoric? Do the media take responsibility for any of this, including on CNN, including on his program? No. So the first sentence out of his mouth is about Republicans. And look at the picture. Trump, McConnell, McCarthy. Within 15 seconds of the story beginning. Go.
Rising violent crime rates.
If this weren't Paul Pelosi, this criminal would probably be out on the street tomorrow. This is what Democrat policies are bringing.
It's a potent issue the Democratic consultants tell me has been effectively used against their Senate nominees in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and North Carolina.
Now let's stop. Their Senate candidates in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and North Carolina are Marxists. At least 2 of those candidates have called for emptying their prisons. In Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes has called for releasing 50% of the prisoners, including violent prisoners. In Pennsylvania, Fetterman has called for releasing 1/3 of the prisoners, including violent prisoners. They have long records, anti-cop. They have long records, anti-real bail. And so why wouldn't you point that out so that people can vote on these issues? Go ahead.
As well as other Democrats elsewhere. More than $98 million this election cycle has been focused by Republicans on ads attacking Democrats on crime. That's about $22 million more than Republicans spent on ads attacking Democrats on inflation. Now, each ad, of course, making the case.
So what? Gee, go ahead.
30-second sound bites that Democratic policies on crime make us all less safe.
Take it from us. Mandela Barnes' policies are a threat to your family. Barnes wants to defund our police.
Violent crime terrorizing New York. But while police fight to put criminals behind bars, Sean Patrick Maloney fought to let them out. Lying politician Gabe Vasquez wants to defund the police. We can't trust him to keep us safe.
Now, every one of those ads can and should be fact-checked, but the bigger question...
Excuse me. You're such a fraud. They could have fact-checked those ads before they played them. They're true. Every single one of them. Look at what they write. Is life more dangerous now? Question mark. I can assure you, you can't get into CNN's headquarters because it's heavily secured. I can assure you that these elitist, multimillionaire, I'll leave it at there, individuals, I can assure you that they live in very safe areas. This is really outrageous. Here you have the Pelosi husband, Paul Pelosi, which demonstrates how dangerous it is in San Francisco. You have people leaving with their feet, walking out, moving out. Absolute evidence. And instead of holding that up as an example of the problem with the policies, they're attacking Republicans for pointing them out. You're a fraud and a clown, Jake Tapper. That's why CNN is not interested in real news. You're a joke. Welcome back. Wasn't that terrific? Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget, go to blazetv.com/LevinTV. blazetv.com/LEVINTV. Use promo code MARK20, MARK20. You'll get $20 off your annual subscription. Give it as a gift. It's a perfect gift this holiday season. Or if it's time to re-up, please do. Our national town hall is growing by leaps and bounds, and I don't even know what that means. Just join us. We'd love to have you. See you next time.